I came home from school one day. I believe I was in grade 6. I was 11, and I don't remember anything in particular happening that day to upset me, but I just had enough. I reached the end of my rope, and it was just my mom home at the time. And I said, "Mom, I'm not doing this anymore. There's no point. There's no reason for me to be here, and I'm going to go myself." And I don't really think I wanted to die as much as I was so desperate for the pain to end. And she was just 30 seconds behind me, but I stormed up to my room and I did something where I nearly uh, ended my life, and she stopped me and wrapped me in the tightest hug and reminded me that you're not going to go through this alone, and we're going to get you help. And that was like the biggest turning point where I realized I can't shoulder this alone. I can't try and go through this by myself. And I don't think my parents fully understood how much I was suffering at that time either.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of What It's Really Like with me, your host, Molly Burke. I truly feel at this point like this show is just me showing off how many cool friends I have, because
Do you have a lot?
it's just me bringing on all of my cool friends. And I don't know what this show is going to become when eventually I run out of my friends to call upon to do this. But I've been lucky thus far that I just know a lot of cool people, and you, Brandon Farbstein, are one of them. So thank you.
Honored to be among the list.
Thank you for coming on the show. Now, for those who don't know, who is Brandon?
Oh, that is a loaded question. I am a motivational speaker, creator, and author. But what you probably can't tell on camera is that I'm 3'10", or just over a meter tall for everyone not in the US, which means I'm the size of the average 7-year-old, thanks to a very rare form of dwarfism that I was born with. It's called metatropic dysplasia. And it's so rare, in fact, that there are only about 84 cases reported ever in medical history. So not
Wait,
just
how
people,
many?
84.
I thought I heard you wrong. Wow.
Yeah, crazy,
Ever.
right? Yeah. So not just people that are alive right now, but like in medical books that are probably decades old.
I had no
So
idea. I've known you for years and I didn't know that.
yeah, it's a really interesting thing to also realize that there are over 200 forms of dwarfism, and each one is a little bit different from the other, just different characteristics and things that it comes with and that sort of thing. But with my condition, if I was born with a severe form of it, which I'm very lucky that mine is pretty mild to moderate, in that it only really affects my bone growth and my joints. But if it was more severe, I likely would have passed away before the age of 5. And so I very much am, especially at this point in my life, realizing how lucky I am to be independent, to move the way that I do, to just have the life that I get to live.
Can I ask, because I obviously can't see you,
Yeah.
what are some of the telltale characteristics of your form of dwarfism? Because I know, say, the most common form, it's generally average sized torso but
Hmm.
shorter limbs.
Exactly.
And then certain facial characteristics.
Yep.
What is yours characterized by?
I would say similar to that, other than the facial characteristics. So I have a pretty average-sized torso. My legs and my arms are proportionate, I would say. So they are short and they are not. How would you describe me? I think it's hard to describe myself.
Yeah, you're symmetrical. Yeah.
Symmetrical, yeah.
So,
According to
would
Brendan.
you say you're pretty proportionate then?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's interesting, I hear from a lot of people when they see me from the top up, when I'm on Zoom or something, that you can't really tell that I have any condition. So my face, my head, all that looks pretty average. Whereas a lot of other forms of dwarfism, like achondroplasia, the most common form, they normally have a protruding forehead or other kind of characteristics where you could see pretty early on within glancing at somebody, oh, that's somebody with achondroplasia, or that's a little person. Whereas with me, of course, my stature pretty easily gives it away. I can't hide the fact that I'm under 4 feet tall. But looking at pictures and certain angles, um, it it can disappear a little
Mm.
bit, like on camera.
I feel like obviously I'm not a little person, but I am a little person. I'm 4'11", so I'm like pretty petite. I'm the height of an average 11-year-old. And so I'm what, 4 years older than you, I guess, in height.
Yeah.
And I feel like all the time people are like, "Oh, I could not tell how petite you are until I see you in person."
Right.
Like it's interesting on camera how it tricks people, or
Mhm.
even when I'm on stage and I come off stage. As a fellow
Totally.
motivational speaker, I'm sure you get that too. Like people even seeing you on stage and then off stage, you're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
you're even shorter than I
Well, especially,
anticipated."
like, when I'm on stage and it's just me, you can't really
There's no
tell all
reference
that well.
point.
Exactly, but when somebody, especially, like, 6 foot plus comes next to me, it's like, "Oh, wow." You could you could tell.
So, how early did your family know? Like, did your parents find out when you were in utero, or was it when you were born?
So it actually wasn't until my 2-year checkup when
Wow.
my pediatrician said to my mom, "He looks great, dress him up, everything's good to go." And my mom's like, "Actually, I think you should take a second look at him. He's not growing at the same rate as his older sister." So my older sister, Brooke, is 2.5 years older than me. And my mom knew, okay, every, few months or so, they're going to be growing out of clothes and into the next size, yada, yada. That was not the case for me. So even though I looked completely fine, everything on paper was completely fine, my mom had that like motherly instinct saying, actually, something's definitely up here and it's worth looking into. So it was about 6 months of very just intrusive testing, x-rays and blood work and CT scans and back and forth with all these specialists because nobody knew what exactly was going on other than there's clearly something that's happening in terms of his growth. And it was about 6 months later that the diagnosis came, thanks to the UCLA, it's called the Skeletal Dysplasia Lab, where they had just discovered the gene for my specific condition.
Wow.
And they were able to somehow link me with having the very specific, very rare, quite unknown condition as well. And so from there, we were able to get the answer. But quite frankly, the answer consistently that we would always get was, we don't know.
Mm.
The doctors didn't know what my progression was going to look like, what my prognosis, what the next chapter, even like what the next year was going to bring. And I think that was initially very difficult for my parents. This kind of blindsided them in a lot of ways, and they'd never dealt with disability. They'd never dealt with anything like this before. So I think, especially in the early years, it was a lot of not just unknowns, but really needing to figure things out for ourselves because nobody else would figure it out for us.
It's very similar, like, with my parents.
Mm,
Like, at first, it was like, "A healthy baby, nothing wrong," and no kind of family history of anything, and then upon finally, after years of medical testing, getting this diagnosis, and the answer is, like, "She's going to go blind, but we don't know when."
mm,
And it's, again, like that, like, they can't really give you, like, concrete answers as to what the
yeah,
future looks like, and I don't I can't imagine how our parents had to cope with that. Like, we're all scared of the unknowns, but to get an unknown for your child, I feel like must just hold, like, a different level of weight,
absolutely. Yeah,
and,
yeah.
so your family, I presume, then had no, like, history of this. Is it a genetic condition?
It is genetic, but it was one of those flukes.
Yeah.
So, like a mutation, as I think yours is too. Yeah. So it's like it literally could happen to anyone at any time.
Mm,
And there was absolutely no history of even dwarfism within our family. So this definitely caught everybody by surprise, including, I think, my extended family was hit the hardest, as I've now found out, being an adult, how my grandparents reacted and how scared they were and how many questions they had, understandably so. But hearing that they were even like that was even more elevated than my parents was kind of an epiphany
mm,
to learn. But absolutely, I think it is something that even to this day, they are very open about, and I know yours are too, of like, we don't have the answers. We're never going to have the answers, but we're going to figure it out.
Yeah. I think for a lot of older generations, because I think in some ways it was the same for my grandparents. Like I know one of my grandmother's like initial instincts was like, let's get her into a living out of school for the blind.
Mm,
And it wasn't that like she was like, let's institutionalize her and get her away from us. It was like that's maybe the only way she could see I would be able to get the support systems that I
right.
needed,
Yep.
because our grandparents just come from a different time
Mm-hmm.
where disability was institutionalized,
Yes.
where disability was hidden away,
And it's like a
um,
horrible thing.
where the
Almost.
ugly laws existed.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
for those who don't
Literally.
know about the ugly laws, like these are something that existed in America up until the 70s. And it literally said like people like you and I couldn't go out in public because we were too ugly to be seen
Yep.
as disabled people. In my case, because I would use a mobility aid. In other cases, because of physically looking different. And so that's the time period that our grandparents come from.
Mm-hmm.
And so having no access to learn about disability.
Right.
And all you hear about disability is, oh, they're taken away from their families. They're put in these homes. They're not given access to become independent, contributing members of society. And so I don't think it's necessarily like an innate ableism coming out in
Mm-hmm.
in those older generations.
Yeah.
It's like a fear of what does this mean for this child that our family loves so much?
Exactly.
How is the rest of the world going to treat and perceive them?
100%.
It's interesting to think about the fact that, like, to wonder how much longer would it have been before your diagnosis had you not had an older sibling?
Right.
Because first-time parents really don't know what to
Yeah, there's no
expect.
benchmark.
And I also had an older sibling who's not disabled
Mm-hmm.
and who's actually 2.5 years older than me. So weird. And that was one of those things that my parents could then kind of compare and contrast
Yeah.
me to him and go in consistently to the doctor and be like, hey, our older child is not doing XYZ and Molly is, whether that's like being really clingy in the dark.
Yep.
Or like one big telltale for my disease is you're fully night blind. And in my case, I was fully night blind from birth. And in the evening, when I would get ready for bed, I would trace my hand along the wall to get to my bedroom.
Wow.
And my parents were like, okay, like, sure, her being clingy in the dark, maybe she's just really afraid. But, like, why is she tracing her hand along a wall to get to a room down the hallway? Like, that's not normal. So they were able to kind of see that. So it's interesting to think if your mom didn't have that benchmark,
Yeah.
I wonder when they would have noticed.
Completely agree. And I mean, it certainly would have come up, probably though not for at least another year or so, as my bones started to grow and they could tell, oh, they're like my legs, for example, are kind of bow-legged. And so as I got, as the bones would grow, certainly it was not the same rate as it should have been, but you could tell like these clearly the development is not where it should be. So they certainly would have caught it, but yeah, it's a good question of when.
Following your diagnosis, what did life look like for you? I know for me, following mine, it became, okay, like, fly in all this intervention. So, like, starting to learn Braille immediately, starting to take orientation mobility lessons, get in touch with different charitable organizations that could
Yep.
help my family out. What was life like for you?
From what I can remember, my parents pretty early on found a specialist, an orthopedic specialist, to take me to at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, where he actually also had dwarfism, which was really,
I
really
love
incredible.
that.
His name was Dr. Michael Ain. And just a very quick aside, his story was really inspirational for me as a kid. He got rejected from, I think, over 20 medical schools until John Hopkins said, we absolutely see the potential in this guy, and of course we're going to accept him. And he became a world-renowned orthopedic surgeon with dwarfism.
Incredible.
And then caring for other people, including myself, with dwarfism.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
Like, I think about the way in which having a visually impaired or blind doctor or nurse in my young formative years exploring my vision loss, like
Mm,
what an impact that would have made on me would be
yeah.
huge. And I see now, like on TikTok and Instagram and stuff, some like blind or deaf-blind people studying to become doctors. I follow
Mm,
somebody who's paralyzed and he's studying to become a doctor. And
amazing.
like they're showing the ways in which accommodations are being made in the
Mm,
medical setting for them to be able to still do their job. And I just like, it's so exciting because we didn't see that. Like, we
yeah.
did not see disabled people represented in medicine on the practitioner side.
Hmm.
And we are people with so much medical lived experience
For sure.
that I feel like could be deeply beneficial when then serving people. So I love that
Big time.
story. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So I remember my first major surgery. I was 4 years old, and it was by Dr. Ain. And basically, they noticed both of my legs were growing, kind of in the shape of a C, almost like curved.
Kind of like,
Yeah, yeah,
okay.
exactly. Um, and like the knees would, instead of kind of being straight, like when your legs are next to each other, they're kind of straight. My knees would like touch, basically. And so Dr. Ain said, we don't really know if and how this will work, but we think it's going to be beneficial to Brandon's growth if we do a procedure called bilateral osteotomies, which is basically for both the top bone, the tibia, and the bottom bone, the fibia, in the legs. They broke both of those bones and put metal like plates and screws in the bone in an attempt to straighten it as it grew. And that hardware remained in both of my legs for over 6 months.
Wow.
And that was when I was 4.
Do you remember it?
I don't. That one I don't. I had another exactly the same procedure 4 years later when I was 8 that I remember.
That sounds incredibly painful.
It was beyond, beyond excruciating. And one of those things where like pain medicine only did so much.
Mm,
And it was about like 6 or 7 months of being in this double leg cast where this was also the craziest thing because they didn't tell my parents what this contraption was like that they knew was going to be going on my leg. So they wheeled me out of the operating room, and my parents saw that there was this like bar in between my double leg cast. And I forget exactly what it's called, but it's this thing basically. It's just like this wooden bar that connects your 2 legs, like, when you have a double leg cast, the 2 legs together so that the legs can't move.
oh my God.
And for whatever reason, it's
Sounds
like,
barbaric.
h and how do you not think of sharing that with the parents of a kid who's 8 years old, who's clearly gonna need underwear, pants, shorts, like, you it's as, like, big and bulky as you can imagine. Like, I can't even explain. It was almost like being wrapped in, like being a cement mummy.
That sounds absolutely
It
horrific.
was really bad.
How so 6 months? Like, were you fully
Yeah.
in the
Mhm.
cast like that
Yeah.
with the bar for 6
Mhm.
months? So, at both 4 and 8 years old,
Yep.
you had this done. Were you essentially just bedbound for those 6 months at home?
I was in a wheelchair.
Okay. So you were
So
able to bend at the knee,
no.
or the wheelchair, like, stuck your leg straight forward?
Yeah, straightforward, exactly. The leg casts literally were up until the top of my thigh, like, right below my groin.
How did you get did you just wear dresses? Like a long t-shirt?
So, my mom had incredible friends. I remember, her one friend, Jacqueline, in particular. They As soon as my mom found out what this contraption was gonna be on my legs, she called up a couple of her friends, one of them being, this woman, Jacqueline, and Jacqueline knew how to operate a sewing machine, which my mom very much did not. And so before we even got home from the hospital, her close friend went to the store and got like double XL pajama pants and shorts and boxers and literally like ripped them apart to then put Velcro in it so that I was able to not be naked below the waist. I mean, that's literally what would have happened for 6 months. Um, because yeah, my other choice would have been a dress situation or whatever. I can't even imagine. Um, so that was quite a lot of adjustment and being like, okay, well, we have no choice. Like, we have to figure out how to make something happen. And that's the thing that I take away from that period of my life is my parents having this mentality of needing to innovate our own solution, where it's like, we're not going to have the answers. We're not going to have a roadmap, but it's up to us to figure out how to move forward and how to do it in a way where it's like, it's productive and we're doing it. And my life isn't being held back by either what I'm going through or anything.
My mom has always said that raising a blind daughter is the most creative job she could have ever had. And I love that framing. My mom is a creative at heart, and she was a photographer and a gardener, and she did graphic design in school, and she loves fashion and home decor, as do I. It's where I get it from. And I love that she took what some might say as challenging and viewed it as creative.
Yes.
Like she said, all the time I just had to get creative about figuring out solutions and like getting homework that wasn't accessible. How are we gonna teach you this? Or an activity that I wanted to do because everybody else was doing it, but it wasn't accessible. How are we gonna make sure Molly can do it?
Right.
And she just viewed it as like a creative opportunity to find an interesting solution instead of viewing it as a roadblock or a challenge that was going to create hardship.
Right.
It was like, how do we make this into something interesting? And I think that reframing was something that they instilled in me.
Yep.
And I really appreciate that mental shift because our mind is so powerful.
Yes.
And when we tell ourselves something, it can become true to us, right? Like I find myself all the time, even today, saying like in my head, when my brain is like, I'm stressed, I catch myself and I'm like, well, if I'm telling myself I'm stressed, I'm going to feel stress. So like stop it and just tell myself like, everything's okay. I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
It's all good. And like just the power of saying like, I'm going to view this as something that's going to stop me or view this as something that's going to help me grow. I would rather view it as something that's going to help me grow.
100%. And especially during childhood, these really early memories or moments can form everything about how we see ourselves, the world around us, and especially when you're living in a world not meant for you. When you're living in a world not built for you, you have that immense external pressure of having to figure it out for yourself. And I just think I really, for both of us, I know I could speak for your case too. If it wasn't for our parents, there's just no way that we would be who we are.
Yeah.
There's no way.
And I know that that is such a privilege and that unfortunately not everybody in our community has that. And I feel so incredibly lucky that that was my circumstance because my parents never made me feel like my disability was a burden on them the way sometimes the rest of society did make me feel.
Right.
But I know that if I had felt that within my own home, I would have internalized that so much more than I already did. And I think that feeling of being a burden, although I still live with it sometimes, I know I live with it a lot less than I would have. And like, it's hard enough to live with it at the level I have.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just feel like immensely grateful. I'm curious, at what point in your childhood did you have that, oh, I'm different moment? Because for me, it was when I was in grade 1 and I went home from school and I asked my parents, why am I different? Because I realized everybody else is writing with pencils and they weren't allowed to write with markers, but I wrote with a black marker. And everybody else was reading off the chalkboard, and I had a teacher sitting beside me writing stuff down on a whiteboard. And I was like, oh, I'm clocking that, like, I'm not like these other students.
Yeah.
And my parents were really honest and just told me straight at that young age, like in a very kid-friendly way, what was different about me. And I'm curious, when in your childhood did you have that aha moment, and what was that conversation like?
Mm. So I'm told the first time that I asked the question, kind of similar to you, why am I different? It was when I was 4. And we were in my parents' room. And I think it was my mom and I. I was looking at her full length mirror and I saw my legs in the mirror. And I said, Mom, why are my legs so weird looking? And she said, Your legs aren't weird, honey. You just have special bones. But, not really understanding anything of, like, special being good, special being bad, like, just, okay. But then it was really during that procedure, during that second major surgery when I was 8 and in the 3rd grade, that I very much started clocking I'm so unlike all the other kids because it's like at that point I was in year 3 and we were learning math and learning like multiplication and fractions and all these things and like all I wanted was to be in school. But I wasn't. I was home and I was in a wheelchair with these double leg casts and once a week they sent this quote unquote tutor who very nice woman, but she was like a librarian or something. And she didn't really teach me anything. No shade to you if
The off chance
miss
that
you're
you're listening.
watching. But I just remember literally all I wanted was to be in school and to be like every other 8-year-old.
Isn't it interesting, the irony that most of those kids, most of those 8-year-olds, all they probably wanted was to not be at school,
Oh, absolutely.
but all you wanted was that normalcy
Mhm.
of being at school.
Literally.
At what age did your height start to differ from your peers?
Hmm. Probably right around I mean, not too far away from that period, honestly, like 8 or 9 years old, so, like, year 4, maybe. That's what you say in Canada, right? Or do you
We
say
say
grade?
grade.
Okay, okay.
The
I'm trying
UK
to
says
be
year.
I'm trying to be inclusive of all
Look
all people.
at you.
Um So, I think that's when I started really noticing it, and especially because other kids would make it very apparent, like, "Why are you so small? Like, why is that guy so short?" I mean, in elementary school, it was nothing other than, like, curiosity. It was certainly not, like, bullying or anything,
Mm,
but I think that's the period when I started questioning, and I was so that's when I remember starting to be in my head all the time in a way where it became really unhealthy
mm.
because I was just basically like, from the moment I would wake up to the moment I would go to sleep, like, why am I going through this? Why am I so weird looking? Why me? And like that why me question all the freaking time. And yeah, that was really, really intense.
That breaks my heart, like, thinking about, like, being so young and feeling like that, but at the same time, I also look back at myself at that age, I remember grade 3, I would go home crying literally every day.
Mm,
Like, every single day, I would get home from school and I would just cry,
wow.
um, because I just wanted to be like my peers.
Yeah.
And did you ever have, like, anything in school where they would, like, do an assembly or talk to the class
Mm,
about, like, Brandon's a
yeah.
little person. Like, was there any ever, because we had those, like,
Yes.
every year growing up, there would be, like, this day
Hmm.
where when I was younger, it would be, like, my vision itinerant, which is a teacher who's, like, specially trained to work with blind students,
Mm,
would, like, get up in front of my class and, like, talk about stuff, and
yeah.
I would braille every student's name, so they'd
Mm,
come over to my desk and they'd spell their name, and I'd braille it for them, and the teacher would cut it out and give it to them, and then we'd, like, do some, like, blindfolded games, and
mm.
we would watch the Louis Braille movie, which has a very graphic opening, um, so every year in school, we would do that, and
Yeah.
it would be, like, the attempt at helping the other students to understand, like, why does Molly use a cane? Why
Uh-huh.
does Molly write with markers? All of these kinds of
Do you
things.
think it was beneficial?
yes and no. I think that was always like the one day when I was cool
Mm.
because the sighted folk have always thought Braille is the coolest thing ever. And I admit it is. For me growing up, I was always like, I don't understand. Like, I didn't want to learn Braille. This is my, like, you wanted to go to school and nobody else wanted to be there.
Yeah.
I didn't want to learn Braille and everybody else thought Braille was so cool. But now as an adult, I am like, yeah, Braille's super cool. I'm so cool. I can read my fingers. But so that would always be like the one day people like thought that I was really cool,
Mhm.
but that was very short lived. It was that day and that day only, and then
Yeah.
the bullying and the remarks or even sometimes here's the thing that people don't realize. Bullying doesn't have to be loud.
Mhm.
Bullying doesn't have to be verbal. Bullying can also be the lack of including.
Yes.
Bullying can like I would view the child who sits alone every day at lunch and has nobody to play with at recess as them being bullied.
Mhm.
Even if nobody ever says something mean to them, looks at them sideways, pushes
It's like
them,
indirectly.
they're indirectly being bullied
Mhm.
because they are being entirely excluded and isolated.
Absolutely.
So I would say I faced almost every level of bullying at different times in my
Mhm.
childhood, but outside of that one day, I think it was, I would kind of like go back to the status quo of how I was being treated. So I'm
Yeah.
curious if you ever had those days that would answer the kids' questions.
I remember in elementary school, my mom would come in to my class, and it was just to like the class that I was in. And there was this children's book. I don't remember exactly what it's called off the top of my head, but some book about a kid that has dwarfism. And she would read it as a way of like, Brandon is like whoever, Johnny or whoever the character was. And I mean, I don't remember it being like this pomp and circumstance sort of thing. It was just like, okay, she read this story that is like similar to what I go through, and they ask some questions, and they don't make a. I don't remember it was ever like this big deal. So I don't think I had as similar of an experience in that regard, not in like a bad way, but in middle school, I would say is when I started to really notice a shift, where it was not just like teasing or like, again, in elementary school, it wasn't even teasing. It was just like pure curiosity versus getting to middle school where it was legitimate like bullying and harassment and like deliberate exclusion. And I don't want to say that it was for the first time in my life, but it was the first like intense period of that. And I think on top of everything else that I was already carrying, especially mental health wise, it got to the point where it boiled over.
It's hard when you're already telling yourself a certain narrative, right? Like you're already looking in the mirror and thinking, I look weird.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're already questioning, why can't I be like everybody else?
Yep.
And you already have this like negative dialogue for yourself that you're trying to navigate. And then when externally other people start to validate that narrative, it's so hard to break out of that cycle.
Yeah.
What did that look like for you?
Well, it took me hitting rock bottom in order to really get to a point of reaching out for help and realizing that I needed it. Just kind of the quick version of the story. I came home from school one day. I believe I was in grade 6. I was 11, and I don't remember anything in particular happening that day to upset me, but I just had enough. I reached the end of my rope. And it was just my mom home at the time. And I said, Mom, I'm not doing this anymore. There's no point. There's no reason for me to be here. And I'm going to go kill myself. And I don't really think I wanted to die as much as I was so desperate for the pain to end. And she was just 30 seconds behind me, but I stormed up to my room and I did something where I nearly ended my life, and she stopped me. and wrapped me in the tightest hug and reminded me that you're not going to go through this alone and we're going to get you help. And that was like the biggest turning point where I realized I can't shoulder this alone. I can't try and go through this by myself. And I don't think my parents fully understood how much I was suffering at that time either, because it just wasn't really something that we talked about. I think it was very apparent that I was going through something and that life was clearly quite difficult for me. But until you make it known that you need help, sometimes it is not very apparent to the people right in front of you every day. And so, yeah, that was the first time that I started opening up, and I went to therapy, and I had to go through 6 different counselors in order to find one that I was finally comfortable with and felt like seen and heard by. But that completely changed my life because I realized like it's not going to all of a sudden change everything from not happening to me. It's not gonna like
Mm.
act as a snowplow to get all the bad shit out of the way, but it's at least gonna teach me, and this is what it did teach me. I can't choose what happens to me. I can't choose how people respond or what they do or what they don't do, but I could always choose what's inside my head and how I respond. And that's the power that I started to like at 11 years old realize that I had, where again it didn't take away any of the bad stuff, but it gave me a sense of, oh wait, I actually have way more control than
Mm.
I've ever realized before.
I was suicidal when I was 14, and I look back at 14-year-olds now, or 11-year-olds in your case,
Mm.
and I'm like, they're babies.
Yeah.
Like, and I think, and I don't know if you feel the same for your 11-year-old self, but I look at my 14-year-old self who wanted to end her life, and I'm just like, you were just a baby. Like, she didn't deserve all of what she was going through.
Absolutely.
And it like breaks my heart. I think of that version of myself as like a different person.
Mm.
And I don't know if you relate to that at all, but like
Yeah.
I'm so far from that person that she doesn't even feel like a piece of me anymore
Yes.
in many ways.
For sure.
And I just have so much empathy and compassion for that version of myself.
Yeah.
But that version of myself gave me this version of myself who is so strong and resilient and passionate. And I think that as much as I wish that we did not have to go through such intense emotional pain at such a young age,
Yeah.
at the same time, I feel so blessed for the wisdom I gained at such a
Mhm.
young age through that and through
Absolutely.
the therapy that I then received at that same time.
Mhm.
And so many people don't enter therapy until much later in their life. And at 11 and 14 are just like off doing homework and playing with their friends and like living these carefree, innocent lives,
Yeah.
which we did not have the privilege of living.
Mm.
But the other side of that is that we gained so much self-awareness
Yeah.
and wisdom. And so I try to like focus on the gifts that came from it
Mhm.
and not what I lost through it.
Yeah.
But in many ways, I know that I never got the childhood that most people get to have. And I do like grieve that sometimes.
Mm. Yeah.
After you hit rock bottom, what did that pivot look like? What did the journey up look like for you beyond therapy?
Mm. I like how you frame that. What did the journey up look like? Um, Really, I think the fundamental shift to get me out of that hole that I was in was first finding a therapist that I felt genuinely comfortable with. Because if I was only sharing like 30% of what was actually going on, that wasn't going to be beneficial. So that was the biggest shift. And then I think that's what really allowed me to see maybe this is a gift, what I've been dealing with, what I've been born into, etc. And I also believe that's the period that I started to start shifting my way of thinking of, instead of why me, what can I do with this? And that was also how I took my power back. Because it's like, okay, I obviously can't change the fact that I'm, 3'9", 3'10" on a good day. But what can I do with it? Like, how can I use this? And how can I help others with it? And that's what really allowed me then, a few years later, through that therapy, through being able to genuinely like build myself back up, to see I had something that other people didn't. And it gave me the ability to share my story for the first time, which was a TEDx talk at 15.
That's a really young age to give a
Yeah.
TEDx talk.
And
I
it's also quite a crazy, like, being at rock bottom and then 4 years later, or
Yeah,
am I
4
mathing?
years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Math is not my strong suit.
No, the math is mathing. 4 years later.
But yeah, that was a very wild journey.
We've had so many parallels in our lived experience, because I hit my rock bottom at 14, and then 4 years later at 18, I was speaking on stage to 20,000 people.
Yeah.
So it's like exactly the 4 year later trajectory.
Right.
Apparently, it takes 4 years to go from rock bottom to living it
10
up.
feet tall.
Yeah. I think what you're saying, what your first point there about, like, if I share 30%, people only know what the 30% that I'm dealing with.
Mhm.
And what you had said earlier about, like, your parents didn't know the full extent of what you were going through until you had that rock bottom moment.
Mhm.
And I know when I talk to my parents, like, I had a speech impediment growing up.
Hmm.
I couldn't say my R's, which, when your last name is Burke, is a real shame. I was Molly Burke for many years. And I always asked my parents, like, why didn't you guys send me to speech therapy? And they're like, honestly, we literally didn't even clock that you had a speech impediment, because there was so much else to deal with your vision loss, and with the medical world,
Yeah.
with the education system. And I'm sure your parents had a similar situation, where it's like, there's so many things when we look at a disabled child that we can see is going on.
Right.
And that has to be navigated. And that our parents have to navigate for us,
Mhm.
because we can't do it for ourselves. That there's those things that go unnoticed if we're not communicating them, or if nobody's like sitting them down and being like, hey, I know you're busy focusing on, like, how is she going to navigate independently? We need to get our own lessons, and how is she going to
Mhm.
learn? But also, hey, she has a speech impediment, so we do need to deal with that too.
Yeah.
And eventually it got dealt with. I can say my R's now. But it is that thing of, like, if there's so much going on for the parents of disabled children
Mhm.
that they're navigating, that it is easy for some things to slip under the rug unnoticed. And I have so much compassion for parents who are navigating that journey. I know I have many parents who listen to this show who are trying to navigate this with their child. And it's okay that things go unnoticed.
Mhm.
It's understandable. But if you're aware of that, maybe you can notice them. And I'm glad that you were able to get to a place of being able to communicate fully the spectrum of what was happening, so that they could add that to this. Okay, what else do we need to do to make sure that Brandon is living the best life that he can,
Yeah.
beyond just his physical health?
Exactly.
Because mental health, if we don't have our mental health, our physical health doesn't even matter at that point, right?
100%.
What did you speak about when you got on stage at 15 and did your TEDx talk?
I spoke about innovating your own solution. So it kind of was full circle, and sharing a bit about my journey, and kind of the lens that I have developed, what we've been talking about this whole time. When you are not given a roadmap, and that's something that, quite frankly, you don't need to have some rare condition, you don't need to have a disability in order to relate to realize none of us have what the next phase, the next chapter, anything is going to look like. So we have to be able to realize we are in the driver's seat. It's solely up to us to figure out what works best, who we need to align with, yada, yada, and all of that, which, as a 15-year-old, you don't or I guess as a society, you don't hear from many 15-year-olds talk about. But I think more so, I was leaning into the fact that I realized not everybody necessarily can relate to being under 4 feet tall. Everybody can relate to feeling uncertain. Everybody can relate to feeling invisible or alone or whatever that like fill in the blank universal thing was. And that was completely life changing because I realized right after I got off stage that people literally don't need to be anywhere near your experience in order to like relate to something that you've been through or see themselves in you.
Yes.
And as a 15-year-old, that was genuinely like earth shattering in the best way. And once I saw that I was genuinely capable of doing that, I was so hooked.
I love that. That's the way I see the world. It's like I don't need to have your lived experience to find a lived experience of mine
Mm,
that gave me the same feeling.
yeah.
So I can relate to the feeling of that experience, and therefore I can have compassion and I can have empathy.
Hmm.
And that's so much of why I'm doing this show is to provide more of those conversations. I really love that. And speaking of innovating your own life and innovating your own path, you use a really unusual mobility aid.
I do.
Can you tell me how that came to be?
Yeah. So I remember when I was about 14, I met with my then orthopedic specialist. I went from Dr. Ain, who had retired, to another amazing surgeon who dealt with a lot of patients with my specific form of dwarfism. So I said to him, it's getting really difficult for me to walk long distances. It's quite painful. What do you think I should do in terms of a solution? He said, well, I would suggest either a wheelchair or a motorized scooter, which basically meant both of those options I would need to look up at the world more than I do already, and also wouldn't really be using my legs in the same way that I am able to. And so that wasn't a great solution. But I went home and I was like trying to think about what else could work and what else is feasible. And that's when this idea popped up into my head. How cool would it be to use a Segway? And at the time, this was in like 2014. So Segways were already very popular, but they were known as toys for rich people. Definitely not like a mobility aid.
Literally half of the mobility aids, though. Like, I feel like
For sure.
you look at I was thinking about this the other day, like, you look at a luxury home for sale, and half of the features that they're selling as luxury and marking the house up for are actually just, like, accessibility aids for disabled people. Like, when a fridge, you can do the, like, wave your hand and the fridge opens,
Yeah.
or,
So bougie.
all of the, like, blinds that go up and down when you talk to Alexa, or, like, all of these things that allow rich people to just be lazier,
Right.
but allow disabled people to just live and function.
Exactly. Gotta love accessibility.
Upcharge for that accessibility.
Literally.
Like, literal disability tax. Okay, so you're thinking, like, "Wait, a rich people toy, could I
Yeah.
use that?" What did that journey look like from the idea to actually going to your family and being like, "Who needs a wheelchair? I need a Segway."
Well, it was probably about like 4 or 5 days after that appointment and like that initial conversation with the surgeon. And that's when this like light bulb moment went off. And I went to my parents and I said, I have an idea. I think a Segway would be a really amazing solution where it's like the best of both worlds. I'm able to still use my legs and get around, but I'm able to also use this device that's getting me where my legs can't take me, yada, yada. But we looked into it a little bit more, and at the time, the only Segways that were available were those huge, like 100-pound devices that you'd find in a mall or an airport or something. And that also is probably over 10 grand. Yeah, I remember it being over like 10 or 11 grand. And it would have been just insanely expensive to make happen, but also logistically impossible without like
And probably not,
a
like, sized
lift. And
correctly.
no, exactly. And so I was then introduced to a device that was kind of like a knockoff in a way. So it's not an official Segway, but it's the same exact technology. You stand on it, you lean forward, you have like a handlebar that when you turn, it turns, that sort of thing. And it was the next best thing because it was only, I think, like 30 pounds, 30 or 40 pounds, and it cost a few thousand. It was like half the cost, if that, of a normal Segway.
And I'm assuming like insurance isn't going to cover this because it's
Nope.
not like technically a mobility aid.
Exactly. It's, to them, a toy.
Right.
So that was, I mean, of course, quite annoying, but it's also the reality of just the situation being what it is. And so at that point, my parents said, if you want to, or like, we're totally supportive in helping you make this happen, but my parents didn't really have like $6,000 lying around to get me this mobility device, so they encouraged me to start a fundraiser so that I could kind of like crowdsource it and do it myself, and that's what I did. And I believe by my 15th birthday, I want to say, I was able to get my first device. Maybe my for 14 or 15, I can't remember. But yeah, it has been with me ever since. Not that exact device, but a variation of it. Now I use an actual Segway.
Do they like? Is it like a kid size? Do they make them
No,
in different
so they
sizes?
do, yeah. So it's basically the same exact technology, but it's in a much smaller form factor, and it's normally without a handlebar. So it goes like in between somebody's legs, and you go left and right by moving your legs, like by moving your knees, which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
And for me, it went all the way up to my crotch. It was like a bicycle seat or whatever, so it was not comfortable. But I found out again just through like ingenuity and innovation. I'm not an inventor. I am not an. I'm nowhere near being an engineer, but I'm somebody that could see. Okay, this technology is already out there and would be perfect for somebody of my form factor. So if I put a handlebar on this device and kind of use a technology that's already out there, but then like modify it a little bit to be perfect for me, this is such an ideal device. And so I've had this specific variation for probably the last 6 years or so.
That is so incredible. I love I mean, as you spoke about at 15 on the TED stage, like the innovation there to be like, there's no solution that I'm happy with, but I'm not going to give up or accept something less than what I want. I'm going to find a way
Yeah.
to make it happen. And like, this is the type of skill set that we as disabled people have to develop. It is a muscle we have to flex because every single day there is devices and products that I come up against that are inaccessible to me as a blind person. And instead of saying, oh, I'm just never going to use that thing, I must figure out ways around it. And when we talk about the unemployment rate of disabled people and the ways in which people only see what we lack
Yeah.
instead of all the ways in which our disability has provided, right? Like I look at our community and I see resilience. That's an asset in the workplace. I see adaptability. That's an asset in the workplace. Somebody who's flexible and adaptable, that is who you want on your team. Somebody who's innovative, who doesn't see a roadblock, who sees a challenge that we find solutions for.
I would argue we're some of the most innovative people in the world.
Absolutely. Loyal. We are incredibly loyal customers and employees because when we find a product that works for us, we're going to keep buying it. Or when we find a supportive community at an employment, we're going to stay there.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like there's so many things that and that's just a fraction of what I can think of ways in which disabled people are actually the employees you want. Disabled people are the friends
Such
you
an
want.
asset,
Like we
yeah.
have so many things that our disability gifts us with. Your device is also really fun. It's like I feel like you have like a brand with your Segway. It's like what? It's like a bright yellow, right? Or bright orange?
That's what I used in the TED Talk. Now it's kind of black and subtle, but that's okay. It's so fun. It has fun lights.
I love it. I think that's so cool. But you had a pretty negative experience, like at the airport, didn't you?
Yeah. Honey, I've had many, as you have, many, many, many negative experiences, but yes.
Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I think I know the one that you're referring to. One of the, Actually, I might not be. I'm thinking of two different incidences because, again, there've literally been so many. But
Don't you hate that? I know people will reference something like, which one are you talking? Which discrimination are you talking about?
right. The first one that I'm thinking of happened 4 years ago, maybe. I was flying from San Diego to Austin, Texas for South by Southwest. And I'm not really one to name names, but I feel like it also makes a little bit of accountability when you name
Mhm.
names. Alaska Airlines. Um, I did all my due diligence as I literally always do, and I know you do as well, calling the accessibility desk, sharing, in my case, that I'm going to be bringing my mobility scooter and it's going to be going on board because every single aircraft, as long as it's over, I forget the exact amount of seats, like 80 seats or something. I'm probably wrong on the exact number. It's something around there. It must have a wheelchair closet if it's a U.S. designated a U.S. carrier. So my Segway is small enough to fit in the closet because I take the handlebar off and it's literally shoulder width that it goes in the closet and whatever, super easy. So called Alaska, let them know. More so though, when I called them, it was to ensure that I had permission. I don't call and being like, oh, I'm going to be bringing this device and expecting them to like bend over backwards if they have certain rules or regulations or whatever. So I needed to ensure that first off, I was able to bring the device. Second, that they understood it was not going underneath, it
Mhm.
was going on board. So I show up to the San Diego airport and I'm looked at immediately by the person at the check-in desk like I have three heads. And they're like, what is this device? We don't allow it. And I go into my spiel like I'm so used to at this point, being
Mhm.
like, this is my mobility scooter. I called ahead. I have permission from the accessibility department and it's in my PNR, like it's in my reservation. That if you look up on the system, you see I called in. And at that point, I remember like I called in 2 or 3 times. Like it wasn't one time. I called again. And then I think I called once again, like to make sure I did literally everything in my due diligence to ensure that they had all the information. Um, and so, long story short, they end up getting the head of accessibility for the entire company on the phone, and he and I had connected on LinkedIn already, so he knew who I was, and I was a little bit. Listen, I don't think I was the most patient person on that call, and I recognize that, so I probably wasn't leading with a lot of like grace or empathy. Understandably so, though. But I remember this guy was very nice, and he's like, Brandon, I'm mortified that you're going through this. I don't have an answer for you other than we dropped the ball, and I am going to personally make sure that you get to wherever you need to be because I was going for like a work event, obviously. And so they ended up flying me first class on United, and it was like 4 times the cost because I saw the receipt of what I paid on Alaska, which of course is like nothing to them. It's a drop in the bucket, but I just thought, like, how interesting that not only did I spend all of this time doing what I needed to do, but now you guys are the ones needing to, like, penny up so much money for no reason because your people dropped the ball. So anyway, it was awful, and thankfully, I ended up getting where I needed to be, and, I don't believe Alaska ever changed their policy since then.
Do you have circumstances like that a lot where people don't view it as a mobility aid
Yes.
because it's a Segway
Mhm.
and a non-traditional mobility aid?
Definitely, which I could understand because people do use hoverboards. They do use
Right.
things that are like actual toys that can have similar characteristics to it. However, the key difference for 90% of people, when you look at me and you're not blind and you're able to see me, you could tell that I have a disability and that clearly I'm an adult in a not in an adult-sized body, so
Right.
there's something that I probably need in terms of my mobility or some assistance or whatever, which, the average person could put 2 and 2 together. He's on this machine, these fancy wheels. I wonder if he uses that for his mobility aid. Like, it's not hard to figure out.
Well,
but
and especially when
unfortunately-
you verbalize that it's your mobility aid.
Exactly. I have the most problems, and I bet you would too, in terms of LT. Malls. Malls are so horrible. The security guards, awful. Going into crowded restaurants, awful, because they're like, "Oh, we're not going to make space for this. Like, leave it outside."
You're like, if I'm in a wheelchair, are you making space for it?
Right.
Yeah, you are. And leave your $6,000 mobility device outside for anybody to steal.
Exactly. And it's not like I could
Please.
put a bike lock on it or something. It's crazy.
Do Segways still exist? Like, do they still make Segways?
I think so.
Are
Yeah.
you ever scared that they'll like stop making them?
It's a good question.
Because like they're never going to stop making wheelchairs. But like a device like a Segway, like what if that went away?
I think it's a very valid point. But at the same time, I think something else would pop up.
You're an innovator. You'll figure it out.
Yeah, I'll make
Take
it
a hoverboard and put
Yeah, exactly.
put some handles on that.
But like the thing is, when a technology like that is already out there, I don't think there is many. I mean, listen, this is probably a very ignorant thing for me to say, but I don't think there is many hoops to jump through. Like, let's say a company like that did go out of business in a few years, but again, since something like that has already been invented, I don't think it would be that hard, quote unquote, to do something again, like in a similar vein. But I'm only
if the
this
technology
wee
exists, I'm
motivational
sure
speaker.
you could find somebody to like make you a custom one, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Malls are a funny one. So do you like the security doesn't like you using it in malls?
Yeah, I mean they unless I've been to that mall, most of the time if I'm at a new mall, I will have at least one of the security people come up and say, "Excuse me, we don't allow devices like this in the mall." And so, I mean, at that point, I'm like, it's my mobility device. Again, the majority of the time they back off and they're like, "Oh, okay, thank you." And then they like call on their little walkie-talkies. It's his mobility device, blah, blah, blah. Hi, Elton.
Elton's like, I heard you say my name a little while ago. I'm going to come and say hi. Don't you knock over the drink,
Hey, Bubba.
Bubbaroo.
Calm down.
Elton's getting excited. He loves Brandon. Oh, you want to say hi to Mama? Hey, my love. Yes, with my guide dogs, I also get mall security guards loving to come up. Do you know what pisses me off though? The amount of times that I'll be in a mall and I'll pass somebody with one of those little yappy shits that's barking at Elton that is clearly not a service dog, and they don't go up to them, but they'll come up to me with my large dog, and they're like got their uniform on and the keys clanking and they radio and they're like asking me questions, and it's so annoying.
Beyond.
My favorite mall experience I ever had, though, I actually did not have my guide dog with me, I don't think. Or did I? I don't think so. It was with me and 3 of my girlfriends from the School for the Blind.
Yeah.
And all 4 of us had our canes at the mall. And this woman told the security guard that there was a group of teenage girls faking blind. And I was like, in what world is a group of 4 teenage girls wandering around the mall faking blind? It was so bizarre. Then they tried to kick us out. And we were like, no. We're actually blind. But also, can you even kick somebody out for faking? I don't know. Very bizarre. Where did they think we got the canes? Like, they were like the most legitimate canes you can get. It was so bizarre.
That's wild.
Being in public as a disabled person is just one hell of an experience.
Oh, absolutely.
One hell of an experience.
And it keeps getting better.
How do you deal with people staring? Because I know that I get stared at, and I always have. When I was a young child, it's just because I had a cane and I'm young.
Yeah.
And people think of blindness as like the old person's thing. Like the amount of times I had people say, "You're too young to be blind." And I was like, you know, it happens at any age, right? But I can't at least see that I'm getting stared at. So I'm kind of like able to like live in my delusion until people like approach me and say something. And I'm like, oh, I was being stared at. How do you deal with it? Because you can see when people stare.
Very much so. To be really honest with you, I think I'm still learning every single day how to deal with it, because it is it's a really hard thing for me to try and describe to somebody that has never either experienced it for themselves or seen it, like, aka been with me when it happens. But essentially to be out in the world every single time, again, it's not like 100% of the time, but nearly every time, to be stared at like you are an animal in a zoo
Mm-hmm.
is so unnatural. And it is so like against everything of like, oh, this must mean I'm a freak.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's against every norm that society like places on an average person, quote unquote. Um, and I think for me, the thing that I'm still learning to like to grapple with is how to not take things so personally. Because it has nothing to do with me,
Yeah.
Brandon. It has everything to do with somebody is curious and they don't know how to express that curiosity. Or you know what? Sometimes people are assholes and they're gonna do mean things. Or there are gonna be instances where they are deliberately filming me or pointing or laughing or whatever. Rightfully so, I can take some moments like that personally, and even if I don't want to, I'm going to because I'm a human being.
Yes.
And as much as I want to be robotic to those situations, you can't just let it go in one ear and out the other, or you can't just like act like you're not seeing somebody very clearly, like again, having all their friends point and laugh at you or whatever. So in a lot of ways, as I'm getting older, I'm becoming more and more content and comfortable with living in my body, but more so what that means from a societal standpoint, how other people react to me, and learning to be as as really like confident in knowing who I am, and I no longer feel like I need other people to validate, yes, Brandon, that is who you are, or you're doing a great job in speaking, or we're going to praise you in this area, or what. Like, of course, I like getting validation, but I don't think I need it anymore, you know?
Yeah, that was a big part of my journey, was learning to self-validate
Mm.
instead of seeking external validation.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm seeking external validation to build me up, that means that every time the external pulls me down, I give it just as much value and weight.
Yes.
And so I needed to get to a place, particularly to do my job and be in the public eye the way I am. I needed to get to a place where I wasn't giving weight either way. I was finding it from inside of myself.
Mm.
And there are still things that will always get me. Like you said, I'm human.
Yeah.
I'm not perfect. It doesn't matter how much self-work, self-development, self-growth I've done.
Yep.
There's always going to be things that like just hit quite right and gets you.
And sometimes it's the most random shit too.
That you wouldn't even think would like affect you.
Yep.
But overwhelmingly, you can say in my comments that I'm not funny. I know I am. You can say that you think my voice is annoying. That's fine. Okay. And
that voice has gotten you a lot of
that voice, people pay
opportunities.
They pay to hear this voice,
Yeah.
okay? You can say that I talk too much, or that you can say anything like that, and like I'm just like, I don't really care what you think.
Yeah.
Like that stuff, I've found a way to like it just truly rolls off my back.
Right.
But then there'll be like, I'd say like the things that can get me is when people say something about my appearance because I can't see myself. So I can't self-validate.
Yeah.
And that's hard. It's like, I just will never be able to self-validate about my appearance.
Right.
So when somebody tells me I need lip filler because my lip is too thin, that like sticks in my brain. I'm like, what if they're right? And nobody's told me.
Yeah.
Like, so I think there'll always be those things. But I do think it's so important to get to part of your journey, and this is not just for disabled people like us who face this maybe more often, but for everybody, it's important to get to a place in your journey where you're focusing on self-validation instead of
Totally.
seeking external.
Yeah.
I want to go back to what you said about, being on that call to the head of accessibility and not being as patient as you feel like maybe you should have been. I feel that so deeply. And I think a lot of disabled people and a lot of minorities do, right? Like, as minorities, we move through the world with this feeling of not wanting to misrepresent our community.
Yeah.
Or not, if this is the only experience somebody has talking to a little person, I want to give them a good experience so that the next little person they meet, they don't have a negative experience,
Exactly.
right? And it's so hard carrying that because we're also just people who are flawed and have bad days and good days. And like, for me, when I was younger and I would deal with guide dog denials, I would be so understanding. And I would stand there and I would politely educate them, assuming it came from a place of misunderstanding.
Right.
And it was in my like mid-20s where I hit that breaking point of dealing with this so goddamn much for so long and starting to get to the point where it wasn't just people being misinformed, it was people being mean and being rude to me and saying terrible things to my face, where I got to this like breaking point where I kind of go into like fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Like, when somebody starts to deny me, my heart races, my palms get sweaty. I have like a physical reaction of anger.
Me too.
That I cannot control. Like it, and I am not an angry person.
Yeah.
I am like a very calm, patient
For
person. And it takes a lot to push me to that point. So now the fact that I'm at the level where it's like anytime somebody starts to deny me, I get this like, like panicky feeling of just, I'm so overdoing this. I'm so overdoing this all the damn time.
Yes.
I don't want to keep doing this. And like, you get to that breaking point. And so I just want to tell you, like, I see why you said that you were less patient than you should have been, but also you deserve to not be patient sometimes when your rights are being denied.
Yeah.
Or when you're having to explain yourself when you already went above and beyond to make the 2 phone calls ahead of time that you needed to make.
Exactly.
And you followed the protocol and you've done all the things. And like, it's so hard to have that balance of like this version I think I'm supposed to be and that I want to be.
Yeah.
With like, but also I'm a human who has this reaction because I'm doing all the steps that everybody else doesn't even have to do.
Literally.
None of these other people have to consider making all these phone calls. And I'm here doing all of it right. And I'm still facing a barrier.
Yep. It is so beyond. It's not even exhausting. It's dehumanizing.
Yes.
Because it gets to a point of like, you feel like you're talking into a void. Nobody's effing listening. Nobody's doing anything
And
about
nobody
it.
cares.
Right. And I mean, it's so easy to get discouraged. And I think I have those moments often, if I'm being honest, of feeling very discouraged because of how there's one thing to be ignorant. There's another thing to be deliberately an asshole and to go through the world with that. And I'm not saying that like, companies are doing that or anything like that, but it's like when for so long you don't care about a group of people and then you expect them to just figure shit out on their own. How do you think that's normal? Or how do you think that that's even okay? And then for the airline industry, it's like, I applaud there are certain airlines that are seemingly doing good work with having like accessibility advisory groups where it's made up of different types of disabilities and passengers that have different lived experiences. But then it's like, okay, still, it's so limited by like the 10 or 12 people that are there at the actual table. And what about everyone else who isn't represented or whatever? So as discouraged as I get, I think it also for me is like the fire under me in a lot of ways to say, keep going, keep fighting, be as loud as you possibly can, because that's the only way that change is made.
And do it for the people who can't, right? Like, do it for the people, like you and I, we're yappers,
Yeah.
right? Like, we are just naturally like talkative, confident people. Not everybody has that ability.
Yes.
And I want to be the voice for those who don't have the confidence or ability to speak up for themselves so that they don't have to. And I'm very much the same way. I'm like, if you try to pull me down, I'm going to let that push me up. I am going to let your ignorance or your hatred or your mistreatment or inaccessibility to be my fire to keep going and like keep having like something to push me to advocate for.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and I don't know if you feel like this, it is exhausting knowing that the moment you've accomplished one thing, there's another. It does feel like the work's never going to be over.
Right.
And that at times in my life can feel like overwhelming. And I think especially in these last 2 years for you and I, like our careers have been in kind of this DEI space, right? Like that's where people place us. And there's been this big pullback on all of that and in our society. And it, for me at least, it felt like as a community, we had been like pushing the boulder up the hill and we'd gotten it like halfway and it was like, oh my God, we're doing it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the boulder rolled back down on us and we're at the bottom again.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh God, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted from pushing it halfway up, but I was inspired by the fact that I only had half to go.
Exactly.
But now I'm at the bottom again and I don't know how much energy I
And then
have.
it's also like not only that, but you look around and all of a sudden we're like kind of alone. And I'm not saying that this was performative, but even as recent as a couple of years ago, when there were so many initiatives, so many companies, not just about DEI, but let's just say on belonging, on things that weren't as like quote unquote controversial or whatever, but just good because it made sense to empower your people or whatever it was. I think that's been the hardest part, at least for me, seeing that we're now alone again.
Yes.
Because we're used to that. Listen, we're also some of the most like resilient and obviously we've been using the word innovative all the time. Like we literally are some of the most brilliant and innovative minds in the world because we've had no choice. But and I'm not saying you and I'm saying the disability community.
Yes.
But you know, we're cool.
Us too, though.
And I think that is honestly so sad.
Yeah.
Of course it's sad for us, but it's even more sad for them because they don't even know what they're missing out on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been quite heartbreaking. Like I said, I think emotionally and mentally exhausting.
Yeah.
And I think it's this frustration of feeling like, oh, the non-disabled people were getting it. They were getting it. And then it feels like, oh, actually they didn't get it.
Yeah.
It wasn't real the way we thought it was. And the reality is like, I view us as them, but they view us as other.
Correct.
And that's really hard to be like, no, we are you. And they're like, no, you're you. You're one of them, the disabled people in the corner. And with your own table, your own panel, your own this.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, we just want to be we can contribute to everything you can contribute to. We have the same lives, just lived in a slightly different way. And as motivational speakers, it's frustrating to feel like people only want to hire you for DEI, DEIA. Because we are disabled, that is inherently the box we're placed in, even though we're saying, no, I'm not just DEIA.
Right.
I'm just a disabled person who can talk to anyone. The messages, I can tell you, I have 3 keynote speeches, and the messages in all 3 of them are universal.
Totally.
Intentionally.
Yes.
Because I know not everybody's disabled.
Right.
And I'm not here to just talk about things that impact disability and accessibility. that doesn't really move the needle forward to integrating disabled people into the greater society.
1000%.
So it's like very, very frustrating. And like you said, I think dehumanizing is a great word to use in this context as well.
Yeah.
Like it does feel othering,
Mhm.
which is a feeling we felt for so much of our lives. Like it's
Right.
a feeling we both felt socially growing up.
Mhm.
And to have felt like through our careers that we've worked so hard to cultivate, we were able to feel like we were actually actively creating that change for future generations.
Right.
And then for it to feel like it's been ripped away is like, so it's hard not to get discouraged.
Yes.
But we aren't doing this alone.
Mhm.
And I just have to believe the pendulum will swing again.
Yeah. I believe that too. And I think these conversations are always going to be needed.
Mhm.
And something that you and I talk about a lot is how it's not that we're not doing the work, it's that we're doing it in a different way. And we're presenting it in a way where it's meeting people where they're at. And I think that is so vital right now.
Yes. Speaking of being adaptable and flexible, you just have to be adaptable, adapt the message to meet people where they're willing to meet you
Yes,
at.
exactly.
That's how change is made. That's how change will continue to be made.
Yes.
Speaking of dehumanizing, speaking of being stared at, speaking of people being out of pocket, can you tell me why the terms dwarfism and little person are
Mhm.
preferred over the M word?
Mhm. Absolutely. So a term like midget, which is referred to as the M word, a lot of people, by the way, don't even know that. So if you're one of those folks, genuinely, please don't feel bad because it's one of those things that until you're told or you're made aware, how could you know?
Yeah.
So I mean that in every honest way. Um, that being said, it is always the preferred term from, I would say, every person that I've met with dwarfism to not use the M word. Of course, there will be individuals that choose to use whatever word that they resonate with, and that it is what it is. Um, but my answer, though, I think I have a little bit more of a hot take,
Ooh,
where
I love it.
listen. I think using politically correct language is incredibly important, and I will advocate for that all day, every day. But do you know what I think is even more important? Asking somebody what their name is.
Mm.
Instead of trying to do all this like mental gymnastics in our head, being like, I wonder if I go to approach this person and I need to like use a word to describe them, am I going to get caught up in my head? Or can I just be like, hey, I'm Brandon. What's your name? And it's like, oh, wait, that's what it means to be a human being.
Mm,
Like that's what it means to say hi to anybody else on the street.
right.
That person just has to, just happens to look a little bit different or move through the world in a more unique way or whatever the specific thing that makes them them. And I just think that we get so caught up in our head where, listen, it's great to think things through. I'm the most notorious overthinker that I know. So I know what it takes to like think about things. But I think it almost does a disservice when we get so caught up in the gymnastics of what's the right term, what's the PC word that I
Mm.
need to figure out, instead of just go ask what my name is. And again, maybe the person that you're going to be meeting or interacting with has had a shitty day, and maybe they aren't going to be friendly to you. I know I have shitty days, and I don't want to be approached all the time when I'm out in public. That being said, um, just remembering that, not even trying to sound cliche or whatever, but if you were in that person's shoes, how would you want to be treated? How would you want to be approached? Do you want to be asked all these random ass questions about your disability or your situation, or just get introduced with, hey, what's your name? That's it.
Yeah.
It's really not that hard.
When I'm in the back of the Uber, the last thing I want you to ask me is, what happened?
Right.
What's wrong with you? Have you tried fish oil?
Yeah, for me, it's have you drank milk to make sure that your bones are super strong? It's like,
No, I never thought of that. Thank you so much.
Or I like when I used to speak to schools a lot more, I would make a joke of like, this is why you need to eat your vegetables, because if you don't, you'll end up like me.
When people ask me, the two things that people have asked me that I always think, like every single time I think, how did that exit your mouth? How did that question not like filter through another layer of your brain? And I say that as somebody with no filter.
Right.
Like I will stick my foot in my mouth all the time. But this, I'm like, wow. Okay, when people ask me, a blind woman, have you tried glasses? Keep in mind, I have a guide dog and I read Braille. And my answer is always, my parents thought teaching me Braille was going to be easier than getting glasses. The other one, mind-blowing, that adults have asked me this. So how do you drive? It's a good question. Why don't you get in the passenger seat of your vehicle, give me the keys, and I'll show you. It's crazy. People are so funny.
Beyond.
The things that I'm like, genius. Okay, so what is the root of the M word, and why is it considered not PC? Because I have multiple friends with dwarfism,
Mhm.
and when I've talked to my friends that have no connection to the community,
Yeah.
and I'll say like little person,
Mhm.
they think that sounds more offensive
Right.
than the M word.
Uh-huh.
They're like, oh, I would have thought the M word was more appropriate
Yeah.
than saying little person. Like that sounds derogatory to
Right.
me. So can you explain for people who don't understand, like what's the negative root of the M word,
Mhm.
and then where does little person fit within that?
For sure. So the root of the M word stems from the circus days when people with dwarfism were basically acts in the circus, like you would see any other circus act, but simply because it was a small person, they happened to be this uh, incredible sight to see and like a freak show, basically. And so that is the connotation that the word is rooted in, and it's going back to dehumanizing. Like it's very, very dehumanizing, and I don't exactly know why that word was chosen, other than knowing like the Latin root of the word means small fly. So it's like
Ew.
I don't really.
It was already degrading enough without knowing
Yeah,
that.
yeah, for sure. Um, so I mean, I think it's similar in a lot of ways to other words that have been weaponized, and you use it when you're trying to bring harm. And
Hmm.
the thing is, not everybody who uses it is trying to do it, but because it is considered a slur, unfortunately, it has the power of, no matter what context, for a lot of people, it's not, even if somebody thinks they're being empowering,
Yeah.
or they think they're using it in a proper way.
Why is the term little person preferred? Like, does that ever feel derogatory to you or no?
Okay, this is where I'm being super transparent. I don't know. I don't know why it's preferred. To be honest, I really can see why it some people can be like, "Well, I don't wanna be called that. Why would I wanna be called a little person?" I think it really depends on that specific person's identity and, like,
Mm,
how much they weigh their condition with their identity. For example, for me, I think it's a part of who I am. I don't think it is who I am.
mm, mhm.
And I'm not saying there's anything right with that, anything wrong with that. It's just how I choose to go through the world. And so, again, it's like it's very dependent on that person. And I think also like childhood, were you bullied?
Yeah.
Did people use that word to tease you? That sort of thing. Um, and I think it's one of those things where it's so dependent on, I guess, that person and what their preferences and experiences have been.
In the media, blind people there's like a bunch of tropes
Mhm.
that are recycled over and over and over again that have informed the way society thinks of blindness.
Right.
And in large part, it's wrong, or it's only representative of a small subsection of blind people
Mhm.
and not blindness as a whole, but it's the only rinse repeat cycle we've had, so it's what everybody thinks. You know, the tropes of like foggy, milky gray eyes.
Mhm.
It's used over and over and again. Wearing dark sunglasses, feeling faces.
Mm.
These are some of the tropes that have actively harmed
Yeah.
blind people like me today.
Mhm.
Because I don't wear dark sunglasses most of the time. I don't have milky gray foggy eyes. And I don't want to feel your greasy, nasty face. So, how do you feel about the representation of little people in media, and in particular, the fact that actors with dwarfism are often cast to play things like gnomes
Yeah.
or
Oompa Loompas.
elves
Yeah.
and different kind of
Mhm.
things like this? Because we see blindness a lot in sci-fi,
Mm.
because we are a sci-fi enigma,
Mhm.
and horror. Those are the genres that love to use blindness.
Yeah.
And I feel like little people have been used in similar ways. Like there's these genres or these like cycle, rinse, repeat, this trope. How does that make you feel? And what would you like to see?
I think the representation has been completely awful for the reason of, for so long, when you think of somebody with dwarfism, the portrayal in movies, in shows, or even in books for so long has been these characters that have been subhuman.
Yeah.
So it's like, how can you not, you see somebody that is small, your first thought being, that's an Oompa Loompa. Or, that's an elf. I'm going to laugh at that person because my brain has been trained to laugh at somebody like that and the portrayal of what that means. So I think as a whole, it is awful. That being said, there have been moments of kind of the silver lining. I think Peter Dinklage is a brilliant, brilliant performer. And he's somebody that has been able to use his uniqueness to influence his characters. And what I really appreciate about him, he's been able to let his talent kind of outshine everything else. So it's like, yes, he happens to have dwarfism, but that's not why he's been cast in all these roles. It's one of the things that makes him him, but he's a really effing talented actor. And I think it sounds so like simple and yeah, it sounds so simple, but when you have a portrayal of somebody on a screen that has nothing to do with the disability, it has nothing to do with the fact that he's however tall he is. Again, it is such a small thing, but it's everything because you're able to humanize.
Yes.
And that for me is what representation is.
Yeah.
Yes, it's moments where you're able to say, oh, wow, I see myself in this person. But I think it's also realizing that we can learn something from these characters or these people portraying the characters that are able to really teach a lesson. And that's why I think portrayal and just accurate representation is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping it has been on an upward trajectory. Unfortunately, it's been a little bit rocky the last couple of years, just based on the DEI conversation not really being a priority anymore. But I think it gives me hope, seeing that there's been a lot of progress made already, even in just a few short years. Like looking back at 2016 to now, I think there's been monumental progress. And then hopefully by 2036, there's going to be even more progress that we couldn't even have envisioned right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the only way to continue that momentum is us putting pressure, not like bad pressure, not saying we have to like go yell at executives of studios and like boycott and do all these things. But at the same time, like until we speak up, This has been the entire conversation. Like, until we speak up and say, this isn't right, here's what we need to do instead, people aren't going to know. And that is the role, not saying that we have to shoulder 100% of the time, but that we have to make sure that we are using this very unique set of cards that we were handed to the best of our ability.
The other side of media representation is the reality shows. I feel like there's been many a reality show with Little People.
Yeah.
I, like many, I think, grew up watching Little People, Big World.
Mhm.
And that was my first exposure to people living with dwarfism.
Yeah.
What do you think about shows like that?
I really liked LPBW as well. I watched that a lot. And I thought what I liked most about it is going back to how normal it was.
Mm-hmm.
It showed, yes, people with dwarfism, but people with dwarfism living everyday lives, driving a car and having a farm and operating the farm and having a family and what it means to be in charge of the family. Like all the things that any other American household or whatever, any other household would be going through. They just happen to be a little bit smaller. And I really appreciated the fact that it did humanize and it did show these seemingly normal people living a seemingly normal life, because that's what they were. And I remember my grandma watched the show a lot, and she really got a lot more understanding about me and the experience that I was going to have as an adult. So shows like that, I think they have their place.
Yeah.
But they have to be done in the right light. Not focused on the drama, I mean, this is all reality shows, but, being somebody that also kind of knows what it's like when you have such limited portrayal and representation, if that's what the focus is, unfortunately, people have this connotation of like, oh, that's going to be somebody that, because I've seen people like that on TV, so he's going to be like this drunk crazy guy, or I've seen people like that in the movies. He's going to be this like really like sex addicted, like whatever craziness. You know what I mean? And so I think like again, there's a time and place for funny portrayals and for things that aren't like as serious or as like whatever as they need to be. Um, but it just goes back to being on the receiving end of having people treat me like I'm not a human being.
Mm-hmm.
I think goes back to like the root of that are some of these characters and some of these portrayals that are just disgusting. And I am very focused on trying to uplift and elevate positive representation instead of being like, oh, this is so shitty, like this was so horribly done. Like the Snow White controversy, for example, like 2 years ago or last year or whatever.
What did you think about the Snow White? What is for those who maybe aren't in the know? What was the Snow White controversy, and how do you feel? What's your take?
So, from what I remember, Disney released like was it a live action? Yeah, so like a live action remake of Snow White, and instead of casting the 7 dwarves of actual people with dwarfism, they said we're gonna do it was like CGI instead, which is like basically using technology to make these characters. So they were not real people. Listen,
which in a live action,
right.
When the whole point is live characters.
I mean, I think I'm conflicted about it because it's like going back to the portrayal thing and the representation.
It's a trope to have that.
Very much so. And I don't think that that's like doing anything good, anything positive. But at the same time,
disabled actors getting hired.
What message does that send?
Yeah.
For the roles with dwarfism to be the only. I mean, listen. Full transparency, I didn't watch the movie, so I could be completely wrong about this. From what I saw, though, that everyone else was a human being.
Right.
And then the 7 dwarves were the only characters in the movie that were portrayed by CGI. What message does that send? And I really understand both sides here. Like, I genuinely do.
I do too, which is why I was curious about your take.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of how I feel externally, like from obviously like in the disability community as a whole. but like on the fringe of your community.
Mhm.
So I was trying to think, like, I see both sides where you hire little people to play the seven dwarves, you're reinforcing this narrative
Mhm.
that we've seen over and over.
Right.
But that's 7 disabled actors
Yes.
who could get a job,
Mhm.
who could be hired, who could get this opportunity that's a leg up and for future opportunities, get exposure and experience. That's good, right?
Mhm.
Like, it's hard as disabled actors because there's so few roles that people are even willing to consider us for.
Correct.
So then when you give one of those roles that could have fed 7 actors to making CGI instead of actually just casting authentically, you know? So I see both sides, and I I don't
I don't
feel
think
like I have a
there's
right to make the final opinion,
No,
so I was
exactly.
curious.
It's I think they wouldn't have won in either direction.
There would have been somebody mad either way.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I very much can empathize with that.
I want to get into some dumb questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
You mentioned, like, oh, somebody on TV being like a drunk idiot and like that representation. Drinking. This is a stupid question, but I feel
Ask
like
me.
people are going to want to know.
Yeah.
When you drink,
Mhm.
do you like are you like a lightweight? Like, do you drink less
Yeah.
and you feel it
It's a
more?
good question. Funny enough, I don't. I proper English. I am not a lightweight, and I feel like it takes like 2 or 3 cocktails or like glasses of wine for me to like really feel something. So like, yeah, I'll feel like a little buzz on the first, let's say the first drink, then the second one I'll be like, oh, okay, like I'm really chip, but like the third one is like too much for me. So I would not consider myself a lightweight.
Okay, so you're not like a one and done.
No.
Interesting. And I know, like, as a petite person, like, people always assume I'm a lightweight, and I'm not.
Right.
So I know that it doesn't necessarily correspond to size, but I feel like a lot of people assume it does.
Yeah.
What
I like
about
to
you?
party, but I don't go crazy, but I like to party. I never had like a conventional college experience. I did 1 semester of university and then I dropped out. So I never like though I never really wanted to have like that like crazy like party era. Um I had like I guess a little bit of that when I first moved out to LA. Like I got that out of me, but I like to have fun, but I don't go crazy.
I had my party era in high school. That was my party girl
Nice.
era. I didn't go to college. By 18, I was off and working, and I was like, the party days are behind me.
For sure.
Fashion.
Mhm.
What about shopping? Because I know, just being petite, how hard it is for me to find clothes
Yeah.
that fit. How is it for you? Like, where do you like shopping? How do you deal with that?
Yeah.
Do you have a best friend who's a tailor? What do you do for shoes and clothes?
Shopping is the biggest pain in the ass.
Mhm.
And for reasons that you probably can imagine, in terms of obviously I need to fit into youth sizes and selections. So it's not only finding something that fits me, finding something that I resonate with that then fits me.
Yes.
So it's like you're adding all these complex layers where, I don't want a t-shirt that says like, I don't know, some stupid thing about soccer or like Gold Star or like that has a dinosaur on it. Like I'm 26 years old. I want something that not only fits physically, but fits, who I am and my brand.
Where
and
you're
all of
at in
that.
life.
100%. So it's definitely been quite a challenge to find like where I can go for that. But I do have a few staples. Zara, I'm a huge fan of.
Zara Kids is 10 out of 10.
Yes.
10 out of 10.
And like all around the world too, which is super clutch. So I've been a big fan of like going to different countries and getting things can't get here.
I was going to say, because they do like city exclusives
Mhm.
and stuff. Zara is not the same in every city, even within the US.
True.
Like, different cities get different stock based on the demo. So pop into your Zaras.
We love Zara. Another one that I recently discovered is called Reese. It's out of the UK, Reiss. By the way, not spons, but if they want to spons either of us, please, you know where to find us. I really love their stuff. It's the shirt that I'm wearing now that has like a really nice texture
I was
to
gonna say
it.
it had like when I hugged you earlier, it has like a seersucker texture.
Yeah, yeah, and I really love they combine, like, form and fashion, so I'm a big, big fan of their stuff. So when it comes to shirts, it's pretty much off the rack, like, I don't have to get them tailored, but for pants, 100% of the time, I have to get them tailored, just in terms of, like, getting them shortened, because the waist will fit me, but then it will be, like, 2 times the length of what my legs are or whatever, so I gotta get those, get that extra fabric cut.
Yeah, me too. Such a pain.
Yeah,
But you gotta have your fashion on point when you're standing on stage speaking to a bunch of corporate leaders
definitely.
or taking pictures for your dating app.
Yes.
I want to get into dating with a disability.
Yeah.
Now, you identify as queer,
Mhm.
so you kind of live at this intersection of being disabled and queer.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that. When was the first moment in your life you realized that you were queer?
It's a good question. Probably around, like, 13, 14. I remember as a kid, I only liked girls, and I, like, would always have a crush, like, at every point of my childhood, I would have a crush, and it was normally a girl that was much older than me. I remember that too. Um, but then it was, like, in middle school when everybody started to become boyfriend and girlfriend, and obviously it didn't mean anything, but when everybody else was, dating around me and I had rejection after rejection from the girls that I liked and then, like, asked out or whatever, and they said no or whatever it was, and I think it, like, got me to see a part of me that was always there, but I don't think I, like, put active thought into it, whereas I don't think that turned me queer, but I think it got me to think from a side of my brain that I hadn't yet before, if that makes any sense, where it's like it was already there, but I hadn't yet discovered it. Like, for example, I remember having a few moments of, like, in the 5th grade, there was, a guy that I thought was cute, but, like, I never was like, "Oh, like, I wanna, like, date him," or what. It's like, "Okay." Um, but then, yeah, middle school, probably around 8th grade, being like, "Oh, like, maybe that," like, starting to the same feelings I was having for these girls, I started having towards guys. Um, and so I thought I was bi for a while, and I came out as bi to my parents when I was probably about 17 or 18. And I kind of realized through the journey of, like, the 4 years after that, I don't really resonate with that. I don't resonate with any title. Not even trying to sound like, "Oh, I'm this, like, Gen Z," like,
Woke
oh,
yeah.
exactly. But, like, genuinely, like, I don't think I'm bi. I don't think I'm gay. Like, if I had to choose a title, that's why I think queer is good because it's like an umbrella term where it's like, "Oh, it's a range." Like, I'm not saying I'm gonna go date a tree or, like, an apple or something, but at the same time, like, I don't think I need to say, "Oh, like, today I'm only gonna, like, be interested in, like, guys,"
Mm.
because maybe there will be a woman that I see that I think is really attractive, for example, like, yeah. So,
So on the dating apps, are you swiping men and women?
at the moment, just men,
Just men. Okay.
but I think it depends because there have been, chapters where it's been both.
Have you ever had a preference to date somebody who's also a little person or to date an average height person, or are you just like open either way?
I would say I'm open to either. That being said, I've only been with average height guys before, so I've never really had an experience with a little person. I don't know what that would be like. I'm open to it as I'm kinda open to people being good people, like, that's what is the most
Yeah.
important thing to me.
You
Again,
fall
not
for a person, not the gender, not the disability,
yeah.
not the yes.
And, like, I genuinely feel that way,
Mm.
and I've had experiences where I think somebody is conventionally attractive, and then I start talking to them within 2 minutes, I'm like, "Eh." No,
Yeah.
thank you. Or vice versa, where like, oh, conventionally, like I may not be super drawn to this person to be like, oh, like I, I find you super hot, but that doesn't mean that after getting to know them, I don't find them super attractive. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And
Yep.
I think that's
Oh,
super
that's
important
universal.
too.
I feel like that's universal. Like
Yeah,
we all know
absolutely.
somebody who they open their mouth and they go from a 10 to a 5.
Yeah,
You're like, "Woo, my god,
absolutely.
close it again." Whoop. And vice versa, like people who once you get to know them, you're like, "God damn, are they very attractive or is
Hmm.
that just me?"
Totally.
Yeah, that's very much a thing, I think.
Yeah.
Um Living at that intersection of being queer and disabled,
Mm.
how does that feel? Because I could imagine, like, on the one hand, you have two communities,
Hmm.
but on the other, like, do you have many other friends that are living in the intersection of both who are queer and disabled
Mm.
as well? Like, do you ever feel like, well, I'm not fully aligned with the queer community because I'm also disabled, but I'm not fully aligned with the disabled community because I'm also have this queer identity?
To be honest, it's that. It's
Yeah.
the latter, where I certainly have made a lot of friends in both communities, but I've yet to find a community.
Mm,
And I think that's been kind of tough
yeah.
because in a lot of ways it's like I'm on the outside looking in and I'm waiting for my turn of like, hey, come join the circle, like come be a part of this. And I think I'm learning to not rely on other people for that, but to like create my own space and create my own community. Very much easier said than done.
Yeah.
When community is like a two-way street, obviously. But I think for the most part, it's an interesting place to sit where because like yes, I'm in those two intersections, but when you think about the definition of like attractiveness or like when you ask somebody on the street, for example, what is your dream guy? Probably would struggle to say that anyone would be like, "Oh, my dream guy is like 3'10" and has like brown hair and really great eyebrows and a strong jawline," which I do. And so
Well, and if they are perhaps saying 310, are they saying that because of a fetish?
right, right. And so I think I've had to learn how to sit with that and not be so affected by it
Mm,
because that's not my problem. That's 1,000,000% other people's problem. But that doesn't make it any less of a sting that people aren't seeing me.
yeah.
So I think I'm in a lot of ways to other things too. Like the more I get older and I realize what it means to be living in this body in a world that is not meant for my body and
Mm,
not designed for my body, I need to I'm learning how to not be so affected
yeah.
by rejection, by things not going my way. Um, yeah, it's tough, but I think I'm doing a better job at that as I get older.
As a little person who's queer and on social media, have you faced much devotee disability fetish? Like, do you get the
Mm,
DMs?
I've gotten them. I don't get them often. So I think it happens a lot more to women.
Mm,
A lot of my disabled friends that are women have experienced a lot more than the guys that I've spoken to. That being said, it's something I'm always very actively aware of. And not even from like oh, I'm gonna have my guard up. I'm always gonna be like scared or whatever. But I think it's like it would be ignorant
yeah.
if I acted like those people weren't out there. And I'm not saying that there's like anything wrong with having a fetish or whatever, but I think it's more so like how you're treating somebody, like on the other side of that. If somebody's going to be super weird to me and like super sexual and I don't know them in my DMs or whatever, like
Objectifying your body for any reason. Like,
absolutely,
nobody wants to feel that.
that's not okay. Yeah. So I think I've certainly experienced moments like it, but I haven't felt it to the point of like, oh my gosh, like I'm not going to put myself out there because people are just being so weird. I know friends that experienced that of like, oh, I'm just not going to post for a month because these people are being so creepy.
How I don't want to phrase this. One thing that you and I were talking about before we started recording when we were catching up is the idea that both you and I admitted that neither of us were really consciously aware of our vulnerability in dating until external circumstances or other people mentioned it to
Yeah.
us. And it's interesting that we're so used to living in this body, we're so used to living in this world that isn't made for us and navigating it, and that we don't even think twice about it. And we view ourselves as like strong, capable, independent, confident, disabled people. And so we don't like to admit, even just to ourselves, that we can be all that, but
Yeah.
yes, also be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
For me as a blind woman, like I have to be aware, and I wasn't until I needed to be, that when I go on dates, which I don't because I'm engaged, but back when I went on dates, I had to remind myself that like bad men will take advantage of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I am easier to take advantage of
Yeah.
because I can't see. And I need to take precautions to make sure that I'm keeping myself safe.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like for you dating, average height people
Mm-hmm.
and taking into account like I'm 3'10"?
Yeah.
Like there is just a power dynamic physically that could happen if somebody wanted to take advantage. Is there
Absolutely.
things that you do to keep that in the back of your mind without fear mongering or making that stop you from pursuing?
Totally. It's something that I recently had an experience around where I really had to learn it firsthand. I had a second date with a guy, and we were talking about watching my favorite show, Love on the Spectrum. He had never seen it, and he wanted to come over. And I, at first, was thinking, okay, that sounds great. But the more that I thought about it, it's like, listen, yes, I had a great first date with the guy, but I don't really know him. And even if it's like, if this was just a friend context, I wouldn't invite somebody over my place the second time I'm meeting them. And then if it's in an even more intimate and vulnerable context, which I was on a date with somebody, so of course inherently is. And that was thanks to my mom. Sometimes I get very annoyed at my mom at kind of giving me advice that I don't want. But then when I listen to the advice, most of the time it ends up being pretty good. So it was a conversation with her. And yeah, not even saying that like anything bad is going to happen or yada, yada, but just being actively aware in every environment.
Mhm.
And your home is your most sensitive, your most intimate environment. And for me, I need to be really comfortable with somebody. I need to trust them very inherently to not only have like being able to feel vulnerable, but also letting them into my home.
I have often felt in the past when dating that sometimes I was like the curiosity date.
Mm,
Like sometimes were people just going out with me to play 20 questions about
yeah. You're
blindness.
like, what's that like?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And then like once they'd figured out, they're like, okay, I did it. That was fun. What an experience.
Right.
But like it wasn't genuine.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other side of the spectrum that I always felt was almost just as weird or uncomfortable was if I would go on a first date and they'd ask nothing about my blindness. Like
Mm.
they'd pretend it didn't exist.
Right.
Because to me, it was like, are you uncomfortable
Yeah.
about it? Like, I know you have questions. I
Mm-hmm.
spend my whole life answering people's questions. I know you have them.
Yeah.
So, like, are you not asking because you feel like you shouldn't? And like, this is a topic we need to avoid because we
Right.
can't avoid this forever. So what has it been like for you going on dates? Do you find it's something similar, or like are you lucky and get to meet men that are somewhere in the middle?
I would say the last. Okay, so I am going to be fully transparent with everybody watching and listening right now. I have gone on a few dates with a guy, and I don't know exactly where it's going. Um, at as of recording this episode, and I with him am very impressed at like it's in between where he's very actively like interested and he's curious, but he's not like making that the center point of everything.
Yes.
And like being super like, well, why this and how that and where did that like it I think it's naturally come up
Mm.
in a way where it's like it's a part of who I am, but it's not
Yes.
all of who I am.
And it's so nice when you meet people who seem to like innately view it that way as well.
Yeah.
That's definitely in like disability dating world. I feel like that is a green flag. Now you live in just a standard rental apartment.
Mhm.
I mean, you live in a beautiful rental apartment, but you live in like just a rental apartment.
Yeah.
It's not like an accessible
Right.
space.
Mhm.
What accommodations do you make for yourself around the house to be able to live an independent life?
Hella stools.
Stools in every room. Honestly, I have 3 stools. I have one in my bedroom, one in my guest room, one in the kitchen because I also need stools.
100% cannot live without my stools.
Do you have a favorite brand? Drop an Amazon link.
IKEA.
That affiliate? Oh, IKEA.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're I don't know what it's called, but like in so many homes that I see, people have like this iconic like white plastic step stool that I've had for like years and years at this point. It's my trusty sidekick. Honestly, other than that, like just like you said, it's a completely normal, like standard run of the mill apartment. It's a bit of a pain in the ass for me, my current layout, because I have a stacked washer and dryer. So my
Ugh,
dryer is like 8 feet tall,
the nightmare. Does it have the center buttons or are they all the way on top?
all the way on top.
So stupid.
Mhm. So I have like a big ass, like like a step
Ladder.
ladder, like a literal step ladder. So you make it work.
Do you bring a stool with you when you travel?
I do. I have a very convenient, it's like a collapsible thing that easily fits in my suitcase. And I have learned because I've been, uh, quite frankly, burned a lot of times by hotels of I've asked for a stool and some hotels will like make it happen or already have one. Some will be like, sorry, we don't have one. So I just would rather have that level of consistency of like, okay, I'm not going to have an issue no matter what the layout is.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, I have to pack half a suitcase filled with dog food and bowls and dog treats. So
Yeah,
we all got to pack our extra little accessibility devices.
100%.
My accessibility device just eats a lot. No offense. I'm not fat shaming you all the time. He's a big boy. He works hard for it. He
He
burns
does.
those calories. In your building, you also happen to have a very nice gym.
Mhm.
When it comes to being physically active as a little person,
Yeah.
what does that look like for you? Because I know just as a petite woman at 4'11", the gym equipment is not made for my size.
Right.
And it drives me insane how many machines, no matter how small, like I get it to the smallest settings and I
Yeah.
still like don't fit or barely fit.
Totally.
So how do you deal with like staying active and physically fit?
I love hiking. I'm like obsessed with it.
Oh, you live in
And
a great city for it.
yes, and I'm very thankful to live pretty close to Malibu, so I find myself going there at least once a week, and it is not only great for my physical health, it's amazing for my mental health. Love being by the ocean, going to the beach. So yeah, certainly living in a place like Southern California has been like monumental for my own transformation. Like I'm from Richmond, Virginia, and certainly am not used to having access to such incredible landscapes and geography and like parks and beaches and like everything that we have access to here. And so I really am a fan of that. I travel a ton, and I honestly think that keeps me very fit and active because I'm always on my feet.
Yeah.
And even when I'm not on my feet, I'm not a huge fan of like sitting inside. So usually something outside. What do you do?
What do I do?
Yeah.
I love any kind of physical activity physical, my lord. I love any kind of physical activity that I have like a prop
Mhm.
because balance is my biggest issue as a blind person.
Right.
So if I'm on, say, like a bike at the gym,
Mhm.
easy, I'm sitting.
Mhm.
No balance required. That's great. The treadmill, I'll like hold the handles
Yeah.
because the moment I let go of that thing, I am like walking
Hmm.
this way, walking that way. I am gonna fall off. It's
Yeah.
not pretty. I like to, if I'm gonna do like weights, like weight training, which I've done many times in the past, I like to do it with a sighted person, ideally a personal trainer,
Yeah.
because I can't spot myself in the mirror for form.
Mm.
And form is incredibly important with doing any kind of weighted workouts to not injure yourself.
Yeah.
So like I only really like doing that if I have a personal trainer watching and making sure they're correcting my form. But I love like suspension yoga, reformer Pilates, like I would say classes is my favorite
Mm.
kind of workout.
Awesome.
Bar, that kind of stuff, because like there's a bar I can hold on to. I don't know, like reformer Pilates, there's a machine that I'm utilizing.
Mm.
And I just make sure to be very vocal with the teachers
Yeah.
that like, hey, I'm blind. If I look lost or if I'm doing the wrong thing, feel free to come physically correct me. I do not mind like you coming. And I just strategically place myself in the back corner so that nobody's looking at me. Because I do feel
Smart.
self-conscious
Yeah.
that like if I'm doing the wrong thing, I look like an idiot and I don't want to.
Totally get that.
And I also find like if I'm not on the edge, well, if it's not a heated class, I'm bringing Elton, in which case he needs the like floor space next to me. But I also find that if I'm like sandwiched between two people, I feel very claustrophobic.
Yeah.
Because I can't, like, we're moving our arms everywhere and we're extending our legs into people's spaces. And like, I can't see the people. So it makes me feel very like locked in and I can't have spatial awareness of where they are. And it just makes me kind of anxious.
Yeah.
So those are the accommodations that I make for myself to be able to still be active and move in a way that's also accessible for me. Because physical movement is hard when you're blind.
Yeah.
Like so much physical movement requires seeing. It's not as easy for me to like to just go for a hike, to just jump on a bike and go for a bike ride, to go for a run. Those things
Totally.
are not accessible for me. So finding alternatives to still be active, which as you said, like it's good for my body, but equally it's good for my mind.
Yeah.
And it's something that's like an important part of my life to me.
Totally.
So I already got enough health problems. I need to stay mentally and physically sharp.
Yeah,
So I
definitely.
try. And so that's what I do.
Amazing.
Now it is time for everybody's favorite part of the show, the awkward question, where
Let's do
I
it.
ask you something that people probably want to know but feel like they shouldn't ask.
Okay.
If you were handed a magic growth pill today, and you could skyrocket to the desirable over 6 feet tall, would you take it?
I think there are moments that I would want to take it, but I think overall, no, because what my life and my uniqueness has allowed me to do, there's no way if I was born any differently that I would have had this path. And so not even from like a toxic optimist, like trying to sound like, oh, I'm making something out of whatever, but like I genuinely believe if we choose to use what we've been given, that every single one of us has been put here for a reason. And that choice is up to us. If we, fulfill that, and I'm not saying all of us have to become like activists and motivational speakers or whatever, but just like being able to cultivate what makes you you and share that with the world, I think is such a gift. And I wouldn't be able to do that if I wasn't me. So, of course, I have my moments where I wish I could be in another body, where I could like press pause on what I'm going through. I think overall, I'm really grateful for what this life has enabled me to do.
I'm going to ask a very motivational speaker question right now.
Yeah.
If you could give the listeners one key takeaway, what's the best lesson that you've learned in your life that you wish other people could learn?
It's a great question. I would say overall, the thing that I've seen as a through line in my life that is the most powerful thing is being the meest me, being 110% every part of who I am and sharing that with people. And so I think for those that are listening, that means being the youest you. And as hard as it might be, as shaky as your hands and feet might be, it's so worth it. Because when you're you encourage other people to be themselves too.
Mm.
And I think that in itself is like such a radical gift
Yeah.
of acceptance and sends a wave that we didn't even know was possible. So not even trying to be like this cliche, like inspirational, whatever, but I guess it comes with the territory of being a motivational speaker.
We are both motivational speakers,
Exactly.
which in a way is actually kind of how we met.
Yeah.
Can you tell our meet cute story? Because it's just so good.
Which is our meet cute story.
How you and your mother came to like
Yeah.
the full circle story.
Okay, yes, for sure. So that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
You're like, it wasn't that cute. What are you talking about? We don't have one. Just me living in my delusion. I'm like, it's so cute. And you're like, girl, it's fine.
No, this is so cool and something I still can't even get over, honestly. So it was probably about 9 or 10 years ago when my career as a motivational speaker was like just starting to pick up momentum. And I had been booked to speak at a few different events in the New Jersey area, which meant my mom and I had a very long car ride from our home in Virginia up to New Jersey.
Because just like me in my early days, your mom would drive with you to your events.
Yes, my momager.
We're the same.
Literally. And this was right around the time that your, I think, first book was released. And we listened to the audiobook throughout the entire car ride. And thankfully, it lasted us so that we weren't like sitting in silence or sitting bored. It lasted us both the car ride up and then the car ride back. And I remember saying to her, how amazing would it be to one day be friends with Molly? And I was just so in awe of you. Obviously of what you accomplished, but more so how you lived your life. And like the choices that you were making to be like, yes, this is who I am and this is how I was put on this earth and here's what I'm going to do with it. Like I was so moved at that. And I don't remember was it somebody else that maybe was like hosting an event that both of us were at?
Yeah,
maybe?
we both attended an event virtually in 2020.
Okay.
And that's how we like met through the screen.
Yes.
And then we just like stayed in touch and our friendship grew as you like moved to LA.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm coming to town. And I was like, let's grab dinner. And it just like our friendship blossomed from there. But what I love about that is like the manifestation of saying out loud, how cool would it be to be friends?
Yeah.
And then like it comes to you, And I just think it's such a demonstration of like, be Delulu, manifest what you want, put it out there.
100%.
And like, how beautiful is it that there's so many parallels in our lives? And I'm sure that's why listening to the book, you resonated because you saw and felt the parallels in your own life.
100%.
And like, I just love the way you put that out there and here we are. And I just think that's just like the coolest friendship birth story. And I just love it. It makes me so happy every time I hear it.
Same here.
I just think it's like, I'm such a believer in tell the universe what you want. And that story outlines that when you do that, it does come to you. And it's a very powerful thing to believe that you can put into the universe what you want and you will attract it.
Yes. And literally shout it from the rooftops.
Tell everybody. Tell everybody. The only reason I am where I am and the only reason you are where you are is because we were a little bit delusional.
Mm-hmm.
We worked our asses off. We spoke it into existence and we believed in ourselves.
Damn right.
Even when others didn't.
And I still think I'm a little Delulu.
I'm absolutely Delulu.
You gotta be.
You gotta be.
To have like the biggest dreams. Like it's the only way.
It's the only way. So, where can people keep up with you and your Delulu and your big dreams?
On social media, I hang out on Instagram the most. It is my last name at Farbstein, Farbstein. I'm also on Facebook and LinkedIn under my name, Brandon Farbstein. And my website is also my name, brandonfarbstein.com, where I have my 2 books, including my children's book that was just released or re-released last year. From Penguin Random House. It's called A Kid's Book About Self-Love. And you can pick that up wherever books are sold.
Love that. We love the wherever books are sold line. Speaking of my memoir, Unseen, How I Lost My Vision But Found My Voice, is available anywhere books are sold, including as an audiobook, as is the original OG, It's Not What It Looks Like. That one's available on audible.com. And I have a children's book coming out. And when I say I do, I mean my guide dog does. Elton John has a children's book coming out.
Can't wait for that.
If you want a cute book about guide dogs to read to your kid or to read yourself to bed at night,
When
because
does that
just
come
like
out?
dogs, comes out October 13th. It's
Yay.
available for pre-order everywhere. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you want to get a book. LT takes the lead, A Guide Dog's Tale, you can find it. So all the self-promo is done. Let's go sit in the sun and like have a glass of wine or something. And
Please.
continue to catch up
Would love it.
off camera and spill all the tea that you guys aren't allowed to hear. Okay, thank you for hanging out on the channel. Remember, this podcast is available here on YouTube on my channel, Molly Burke, as well as over on Spotify. This is entirely self-funded and self-produced. It really helps me out when you follow the show over on Spotify as well. So thank you guys so much. And now you know what it's really like.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.